And good afternoon, YouTube. Good afternoon, America, or anybody else that might be out there watching. Did everybody test out their bunker this weekend? It seemed like there for about 6-7 hours or so that everybody thought the world was going to implode. It was kind of almost amusing to watch until the after effects started settling in and the political agenda started getting inserted, and it's been all downhill ever since then. I mean, really, you had a couple hundred instigators of socialists and communists basically fighting each other, and everybody got all in an uproar like America was done for or something, and everybody's blaming somebody else and blaming people that weren't there and yada yada. It was almost amusing until the alter agendas started coming out. It was what, 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, when the whole Confederate flag agenda, memorial removal agenda was back in the spotlight, and that got the pushback and kind of went away, and now it got brought back out full force, and this same old discussion gets rehashed on a national level in an irrational way when it needs to be a local level discussion in a rational way. There is not a national solution, and it needs to be left to local areas to decide these things instead of a bunch of people getting bussed in from other places trying to fight it out and physically remove, actually, memorials, basically. But I know Mule did a chat, or did his blog talk last night on Liberty and Firearms Social Club Blog Talk Radio, and I haven't heard it yet. I'm sure you discussed this, so I'm sorry I haven't heard what you said, but I wish I could have caught it. But I think what people fail to realize is, in most respects, those are private monuments, privately funded, privately developed, that may have been donated onto public space, or in a lot of cases are on battleground space, and put there by Sons of the Confederacy, Daughters of the Confederacy, lots of organizations like that, you know, a couple decades or so afterwards. And people act like the government's sponsoring this stuff or something. But I think what the bigger agenda that I see, and really what this video needs to be about, is the communization of America. The communist agenda to destroy American culture and heritage, and to bulk everybody into one giant mass of people. The Southern culture is one of the few distinct cultures in America still, even after urbanization and modernization has taken away a lot of the rural lifestyle. And but Southern tradition is still unique without the rural necessarily part of it. It is a very distinct area, and it's one of the few that maintains a direct link in history to being separate and a separate nation. So the communists can't allow that. And I think it's very clear when the propaganda came out, and the propaganda being the CNN and MSNBC and everybody else coming in with a message that they were delivering. Because if you were to watch those channels and the videos that they, and the comments they put to any footage of the Charlottesville incident, there was only peaceful protesters. There was only peaceful opposition to these violent neo-Nazi skinheads, or whoever they were claiming was there. The alt-right was the violent ones. And I watched footage from the night before when they had that obviously symbolic, there was obviously Nazi symbolism with that torch rally. Not going to deny that. But it was pretty much done peacefully until there was a little fisticuffs near the statue, near the memorial they surrounded. Because some people had decided to go in there and surround it, whatever. And then the next day, the people that had the, I mean, you shouldn't have to get permission from the government to protest, but the people that had gotten the permission and went through all the hoops to say they could do this organized protest, go in there, and they are channeled through basically a gauntlet of counter-protesters who are throwing things at them, many varied objects of questionable safety, definitely could do severe harm to somebody. And then when the protest is declared, after the government got their quota on how many incidents had occurred, like fisticuffs and things getting thrown around and people hit with bats and rocks and stuff, then they declared an unlawful assembly and told everybody to leave that was supposed to be, had organized a protest. And they had to run the gauntlet again through a bunch of violent agitators who were basically throwing things and other things. So the government definitely went out of its way to make that a adversarial event. They didn't want it to go down peacefully. That was pretty apparent in the way that they did that. And the people that showed up to counter-protest were there for a fight. They brought weapons, weapons to injure, weapons to maim, and I didn't see a whole lot of bats and clubs and stuff being carried by the supposed alt-right. They did have shields, I did see that, and some helmets and protective gear primarily. But when things started getting hurled at them, they just walked away or kept walking down the street as they were chased and tormented, basically. But if you watch NBC and CNN, none of that happened. None of it. And obviously the agenda gets pushed harder when that young lady got hit by the car under questionable circumstances. And you get to look at it like, you know, the communists left the protest and continued to do their own protest in the middle of the street, basically inhibiting traffic and everything else. And then they wonder why things like that happen. And they act like they're the victims. But the agenda pushed by the mainstream is definitely hardline communist propaganda. Because, for one, the communists and National Socialists are natural adversaries. And are we not under basically soft communist rule as we stand? I mean, look at the 10 planks of communism and their directives on how to achieve their objectives. America's about halfway there if you go through line by line. Central banks, graduated income tax, heavily graduated income tax, property rights revoked. You know, how far, you know, you can't say we're fully down that line, but you know, when you go into property taxes and asset forfeiture and everything else, we're getting close. All in the last 100 years, a little bit over 100 years, if you talk about the socialist agenda getting inserted into American politics. So I get Americans being concerned about National Socialists that, you know, basically only accept one group of people. But you also got to look at the agenda of the communists who want to further their grasp upon America, and they use the media wing, which would be another part of the communist agenda, to seize all outlets so they can push propaganda. And they've seized basically the big corporate ones and push out what they want. I don't see how people don't see that the communists and the socialists are fighting, and we shouldn't really care about who won. They're a drag on society as a whole. but because the agenda is there, I just think people lost that in the translation of how the communists approach that. And not gonna go well moving forward, but it's just we'll see if the statue discussion gets tamped down a little bit. It doesn't seem to be as of 5 days later. Seems to be fairly still reactionary on a lot of parts to continue to push this erasure of culture and history. Like we say, folks, secede or die. Secede and hold on to what you got to, or everything that you know is definitely going to die of the continued onslaught of government, heavy, overbearing government. That's about all I can say about that. Government always trying to get the angle on how they can further their control and power. If you look at those events, it's like convenient reason for the government to further enhance their police state profile on any future protests, future free speech events, etc., etc. And you got all these other places basically denying rights and stuff. We'll see how it plays out. I wouldn't say I'm hopeful. It definitely taking a turn for the worse. But there's definitely bigger fish to fry than worrying about a few monuments. When you have the further continued imposition of the federal government, and you look at what's going on in federal courts with denial of rights. The federal government doesn't recognize the First Amendment anyway when they create a supposed First Amendment zone out in the middle of nowhere. So I don't know, folks. Just want to say you're definitely living in the communist occupied America. It's protecting itself from all comers, and they seem to be the ones that hold the biggest sway and power. So I wouldn't say we're heading in any other direction, for sure. So I don't know. Any thoughts below? We'll continue to see how it develops. I clicked on a old Green Dragon Tavern Chats video today. It took us back to early 2014, before things really started getting heated, and it was interesting to hear what we were talking about, which would occur just a couple months later. I don't know, maybe Tony knew it was all going down anyway. He had already premonitioned it, but we all thought it was coming, and it showed up. Sure enough, right there in our backyard, and we're gonna have more of the same. Like they say, prepare, get ready, live free.